Hi guys, it's Leslie and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I think it's probably been like a month and I sort of apologize for that. I've been meaning to make videos, I've been wanting to make videos, I've been watching videos, but I just haven't had the time and I just cannot film when my family is home. It's too chaotic. Who knows what I'm gonna do this summer since my kids will be home like 24/7, but we'll worry about that in 5-6 months time. Today, I would like to share with you my favorite reads of 2018. These top 10 books that I read, I'm pretty sure I gave them all 5 stars and I'm okay with that. At number 10, I will put The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. That is like a name I cannot say. I've just had to repeat that like 7 times. I just really loved this children's story. I don't know if I've ever watched the movie when I was little, but I very much enjoyed the book. I loved the characters. Children's classic literature that's written in like, what, early or late 1800s, early 1900s is so good. I'm for sure going to be reading more of it this year. I enjoyed a lot of it that I read in 2018. And I'll just move right into Anne of Green Gables. I read 3 of the Anne of Green Gables series. So I read Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, and Anne of the Island. All of them are 5 stars. I loved all of them. Anne Shirley is one of the most interesting characters to read about. She's like an eternal optimist, but she has a lot of depth to her, and I love all of it. I can't wait to read more of the series this year. I have 2 other children's-ish books, middle grade books on this list. I guess coming in at number 8 would be Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. I talked about this in my middle grade March wrap up, so if you're interested in more of my thoughts on that, you can check out that video. I just think that this has so many good life lessons in it that's written obviously for children but appeals to adults. I love the audiobook. It was awesome. Highly recommend it. The other children's book, or the last children's book that's on this list, is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This is sort of like, you know, it's getting all of the Harry Potter comparisons, but it does have that feel, a younger girl being whisked away to this sort of land that she never even knew she could be a part of, and what that means. And I'm very excited to read the second book in the series, which is already out, but I've still been on a wait list at my library, so as soon as I get that, I will be reading it. Number 6 on this list I'm going to give to The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown. This is a nonfiction story about the Donner Party. If you're familiar with the Donner story, basically people who are on a wagon trail to California, they leave too late, they get stuck in the snow, it's horrible. There definitely is resulting to cannibalism. That's probably the most famous part of the story, and it's pretty horrific. This book though is so good. You just follow one character named Sarah Graves and you feel all of it, the hope and the grit that these people have to complete a trail. This one is the California Trail, but much like the Oregon Trail or any of those long journeys west in, like, you know, early 1800s, mid 1800s, and it was so good. I listened to the audiobook. You do have to have a little bit of a strong stomach for it, but I don't remember it being like super gross or anything. It's just kind of the facts of it, but it is a page turner. For being a nonfiction book, totally read it. The next book on my list I will put at number 5, I guess, is Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas. This is a story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a nonfiction biography account of a theologian who ultimately was murdered by the Nazis in World War II, at the end of World War II, and it's just his life, like his thoughts on religion and also his determination to go against the Nazis and how he was involved with that. This is a pretty long book, but I devoured it. I think I listened to the audiobook in like maybe 2 days, and it was pretty long, but I really liked it. If you're interested in World War II history or theology of any sort, I mean, this is Christian theology, but if you're interested in biographies, this is definitely a book for you. The next book on the list, number 4, is a little bit of a cheat, much like the Anne of Green Gables, because I threw 3 of the books in there. But this is also a trilogy, a fantasy trilogy that I have never heard anyone talk about, save for Matthew Sharapa mentioned wanting to read it, but I don't know if he ever did. But, you know, maybe he has, and I just didn't see a video about it. But this is Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey, and the trilogy, I think, the trilogy is called like Phaedra's Trilogy, but it's Kushiel's Dart, Kushiel's Chosen, and Kushiel's Avatar. I seriously listened to 90 hours of these audiobooks in like a week. I listened to them from like Christmas Day to New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. So I got them in right under the wire of 2018, and I really liked them. I've talked before about how I have a hard time with fantasy. I don't know if I can't get into the world or I don't know what it is, but I loved these books. They follow a girl named Phaedra who is what they call an angusette, and she is someone who feels pleasure with pain and like an extreme amount of pain. So she's sort of this courtesan who, you know, has her way with many patrons, and she basically collects secrets. And that's like the most basic telling of the plot. I just felt like I couldn't put it down. I just wanted to know what was happening. I loved the characters. I loved the development of the plot. I loved the world. My favorite part of this trilogy is that it barely had any magic in it. I think coming to terms with how I feel about fantasy, that may be the number one thing that turns me off, is if magic is not done right in fantasy books, it either becomes this entity that has like an enormous amount of power, and no matter what you do, the magic always has its own set of rules and can negate itself. That bothers me. Or it just becomes so complicated that I don't understand why people have powers, why they don't, how they run out of it, or whatever. So this one is really devoid of magic. There's a tiny bit in there, and I don't even know if you would call it magic, but whatever. It is a little bit of magic. So I feel like that is my niche. If you have any fantasy recommendations that really don't have a magic system in them, let me know, because I think that's my spot. I think that would be my lane. I'm gonna stay in it. The third book on my list, I sort of just picked one of many books that I read in this sort of genre, but the one I liked the most was Beyond Band of Brothers, the Memoirs of Dick Winters by Dick Winters. This is a war memoir by one of the guys that was in Easy Company, which is what the show Band of Brothers, obviously in the title, is based on, and he's sort of the main person in Band of Brothers. If you've seen it, you know who I'm talking about, played by Damian Lewis, red-haired guy. He's like their main leader. What is the word? Why don't I know any of these things? I read a bunch of war like memoirs this year, particularly of the guys from Easy Company. I love Dick Winters. I think he is such an amazing person. He's sort of that all-American guy that you're like, why aren't men made like this? Like super respectful, super hardworking, brave. He's selfless. I love everything about what he represents, and it's sort of that essence of a person that makes me really love World War II history, in particular, like soldier like point of view. I think just the camaraderie that men have, or women these days, in war is, there's nothing like it. You could not make that happen in any other situation besides war, I think. And that's obviously coming from a complete civilian, but that's just my own personal opinion. And I just find that so, I don't know, I just really love it. And I think this book, learning from his point of view and seeing how he thought about the military and what he went through and his life since World War II, I just loved it. I thought it was so good. Flew through it. If you're into memoir, if you're into World War II history at all, you'll love it. Definitely check that out. Number 2 on my list is going to be Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This is, again, a giant theme in my life is World War II history. I love it. I can't get enough of it. I guess it's a problem, but not really, because, you know, everybody's got their thing. So this is the story of Louis Zamperini and what he went through from being a U.S. Olympian to being shot down over, well, in the Pacific, being stranded in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by sharks for numerous days. Like, I think it's like 50 days or something insane. Like, it's a long time. It might even be more. Being picked up by the Japanese and then spending the rest of his time in a POW camp. And this book is not for the faint of heart. It is really tough to read because of the treatment he received, like, at the hands of the Japanese, but also just being shot down, being stuck in the ocean, watching his friends die in these situations, and it was rough. But this book is a lot about redemption and forgiveness, and I just think it's super important. It's just a book that I think everyone should read. I don't know of anyone who's read it who has not liked it, except maybe if they thought it was just too graphic and like overly violent, because it certainly is. And that's a valid point. But that's, you know, up there for definitely a book that I would read again, and it will definitely be with me for years to come. For my number 1 book of the year, I will say the other ones are really in no particular order, but this one I think is my favorite of the year, and that is The Unseen World by Liz Moore. This was sort of the booktube darling a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but I remember a lot of people talking about it, and I think it probably was on a lot of people's best of the year list that they had a couple years back, but I absolutely loved this book. I think it has all of the things you need to make a great novel. It has interesting characters. The plot is, it's a driving plot, but it's not overly plotty. That's not a thing, but you know, it's not like the plot gets in the way of the characters. If the character gets in the way of the plot, it's just they meld together really seamlessly. It's about this girl, Ada, whose dad works for a college, and he's this professor, but also like he does a cryptology or whatever it is, programming, whatever, early computer stuff, and she is trying to figure out these secrets of her dad and this relationship she has with her father and sort of his background and things she never knew about him, and it's just the best. It's so well written. The prose is just the best. I don't read a ton of literary fiction. It's something I probably should read based on how much I loved this book, but I just think this is a book that everyone could read, everyone would like. There's really nothing about it that I think someone would say, well, that's boring, or it's not that type of book. It's so engaging. I think I was hooked within the first like 10 or 20 minutes of listening to the audiobook. I couldn't put it down. I just think it's perfection on so many levels, and yeah, so that's the best book I read in 2018. I'm hoping that 2019 has a number of really amazing books again. I will say that this year, outside of The Unseen World and maybe Unbroken, that the books that I read were good and I really liked them, but I didn't have that like, oh, I'm still thinking about them, and oh, I would love to reread these. A couple of years ago, I read like The Nightingale and When Breath Becomes Air and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and those were all books that I like still think about, and I didn't read as many of those in 2018, so I'm hoping 2019 has a lot more of those types of books, but I guess we will find out. I hope you have a great 2019. I hope your 2018 was amazing. And if you've read any of these books, let me know how you feel about them. And I guess I'll see you next time. Bye.